Hello, my name is Sally Walker, and I welcome you all to today's NOKELive event. I serve the college as the Director of Alumni and Donor Relations, and on behalf of Roanoke College, I welcome each of you to the series NOKELive, as it's presented by the Roanoke College Alumni Association. During today's NOKELive event, we are celebrating 15 years of RHouse at Roanoke College, indeed one of our greatest traditions for incoming students each year. Our featured panel of presenters have collectively worked on each and every RHouse build together. I will introduce them in just a moment, but I want to cover a couple logistics. This event is being recorded and will be available this weekend, starting this weekend on the Roanoke College Alumni YouTube channel for future viewing. For those that are joining us on YouTube, please introduce yourselves and share your comments and ask questions to our panelists using the chat feature. And so it's such an honor for me to present our panelists today. We have back to the college former chaplain, Reverend Paul Henriksen. Rev Paul's journey to Roanoke was not direct. He earned a degree in engineering at Virginia Tech, worked at NASA in the early days of the Space Shuttle program, and was working on a graduate degree when he was asked to help with youth programs at his church. And that was where he felt the call to become a minister. After seminary and ordination, his first job was as assistant pastor of a church in Manassas, Virginia. He then came to Roanoke in 1982 as assistant chaplain, and 2 years later became the full-time chaplain. Rev Paul served Roanoke College for 31 years, retiring in 2013. Our second panelist, Jesse Griffin, serves the college as the director of the Center for Civic Engagement. Jesse obtained his degree in biology and secondary education at Warren Wilson College and a master's in counseling at Radford University. Before coming to Roanoke, Jesse lived in Nicaragua as a Peace Corps administrator. Jesse began working at Roanoke in 2003 and works with a stellar group of 25 student leaders who run the Center for Civic Engagement. Jesse and his student staff work to engage all Roanoke College students in learning and service to the local, national, and global community. When not collaborating with many local nonprofit organizations, Jesse is helping students design alternative break service trips, including some in Latin America, and is supporting faculty in service learning course design. And our third panelist, Brian Clark, is a 2001 graduate from Roanoke with degrees in environmental science and religion and philosophy. While at Roanoke, Brian was a resident advisor, president of the Student Government Association, member of Earthbound, and he worked for Student Affairs and Tech Crew. He was quite busy. He deferred his first year at Roanoke to hike the Appalachian Trail. Perhaps we'll have a sad story there, Brian. He later pursued a master's in arts degree with a concentration in environmental studies at Goddard College in Vermont. And Brian currently serves as the construction director for Habitat for Humanity of the Roanoke Valley. And in this role, he is the Habitat organizer working annually with our Roanoke College RHouse build. So welcome to all of our panelists. And now it is my pleasure to turn it over to Reverend Paul Henriksen.
Good afternoon. It sounds like if I listen to everybody's graduate degrees that we're smarter than we've ever shown people. And well, we'll see how that plays out today. But if you were smart enough in 1982, on December 12th of 1980, actually, 1980, 40 years ago, and you had $1,000 just laying around, you could have invested that and bought 45 shares of Apple stock. If you had kept those 45 shares of Apple stock, Today, they would be worth over $675,000. So not a bad investment, $1,000 going to $675,000. But I'm going to tell you about how through pure serendipity, I invested $1,000 and it became $750,000 through the work of Habitat. You see, in 1987, I was just a rookie chaplain, didn't know much about anything, and the Lutheran Church offered $1,000 for a program, any program. So this was in August of '86, actually, and I threw together this cockamamie idea that I would take students on a Habitat for Humanity spring break trip. I knew very little about Habitat and it didn't have any idea. So they gave me the grant and I did nothing, absolutely nothing, until the second or third week in January when I saw that spring break was coming up and I better do something. And as I was kind of trying to figure out how to fudge this thing together, I got a call from a campus minister at Geneseo University up in New York. And he says, we're on our way to Columbia, South Carolina to do spring break for Habitat for Humanity. And we wonder if we could just stop by and spend the night at the college. And I said, I'll tell you what, if you give me some phone numbers, you can not only stop by, but I'll put you up and I'll serve you meals and everything. And so he gave me a couple of numbers and I called. And so boom, pretty soon it was all set up. I took 7 students on that first trip. We put on half of a roof and we thought we were God's gift to carpentry. The next year, my brother, who is a building contractor, came with us and we completely framed a house. And that was a turning point in our Habitat experience. That year we had probably 25 students go along. And since then, we've gone on over 50 trips, many of them spring break, couple of them fall break. We've done hurricane response trips to New Orleans and to Texas, all because of this $1,000 that came along at the right time to start doing spring break Habitat trips. So one year in Columbia, South Carolina, the folks down there said, every year they build a house on campus at the University of South Carolina and then transport it to its permanent location. And I said, what a crazy idea. That would be something else. And at that time, Jesse and I were working hard for the orientation program here, and we had negotiated with the administration that at least a half a day in orientation ought to be community service. We thought that was a good idea until we started trying to put it together. Jesse had a full head of hair when we started that, and that was just a crazy trying to get 600 people out in Roanoke Valley in some meaningful work with transportation and supervision. Oh my goodness, it was something. So I just kind of said, boy, it would really be cool if we could build a house on campus and part of our orientation program. Well, not much came of that idea until I did a wedding for the Higginbotham family. The daughter had graduated from Roanoke College, and during the reception, I was talking to Mr. and Mrs. Higginbotham, and we were talking about Habitat because their corporation, Corrugated Container Corporation, had given money to Habitat, and we were just talking about it. And I said, this is weird, but someday I want to build a house on campus and then transport it someplace else. And then the band started up at the reception, and that conversation just went away. About 6 weeks later, I get a call from the Roanoke Valley Habitat Group saying, Paul, we just got a $25,000 gift from the Higginbotham family to build a house in Roanoke, but they said it has to be built on the campus of Roanoke College. Do you know anything about that? Well, I said yes, and then that was the start of it. In order to build a house for Habitat for Humanity in the Roanoke Valley, $50,000 sponsors a house there. And so in 2006, Jesse and I lost sleep. We probably almost lost our friendship. Anyhow, a whole lot of craziness went into this first Habitat build on campus, which was in the lot on the corner of Clay and College Avenue. And by the blessing of God, it went okay. It went actually very well. And so the administration said, well, that was a great idea. Let's see if we can do that again. And so that kind of started this whole thing in 2006. And since then, we will be coming up on 15 years of that. Now, do a little math. $50,000 times 15, and you're going to come up to something over $700,000, and that doesn't count the money and time that we spent on spring break trips and fall break trips and winter break trips and all this stuff. But it's easy to say that over the years that Habitat has been a habit at Roanoke College, we have generated from that $1,000 investment well over $750,000 towards building safe, secure homes for God's people in need. And we can say, and I don't believe any college in the nation can say this, that since 2006, every incoming freshman at Roanoke College has worked at least an hour and a half on a build for Habitat for Humanity. We tried to link the college's commitment to train students for lives of service. And so within the first 3 days they're here at Roanoke College, they are participating in a hands-on, very visible service activity. So since 2006, do the math, 500 students a year for 15 years. So all these students have at least pounded one nail in a house for Habitat for Humanity. And that all started with this little dream of $1,000 and a chance phone call from Geneseo College up in New York. And now we are about to celebrate another build in the coming year. Now Brian's going to say a lot and Jesse's going to say a lot, but I can say that those first years we worried and worried and worried about whether this was really going to happen. I'm going to put Brian and Jesse on the spot, and I'd say if we were going to build an RHouse next week, y'all probably pull it off because it has gotten to be such a well-organized project that is a stellar activity here at Roanoke College. So anyhow, for those of you out there, some of you maybe participated in a Habitat for Humanity spring break or fall break trip. I'd love to hear from you. We have many stories and some of which can be shared publicly in a nice way. All I have to do is to say Sheely's, and it will bring a smile to the faces of anybody who went on trips to Columbia with us. But anyhow, I'm going to pause, Sally, and let Jesse and Brian jump in there. You got it.
Hi, I'm Jesse Griffin. I work in the Center for Civic Engagement. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about the impact that I feel like that RHouse has had on our students. You know, it's interesting when you think about the idea of building a house during a freshman orientation. We have to keep in context what's going on in the lives of 500 college freshmen, their first day of freshman orientation. You know, they don't know anyone, they're nervous. All they're probably thinking about is putting posters on the wall, making sure the Wi-Fi works well, you know, all the things that you stress about that very first day or two of college. And yet here they come, and we give them a gray RHouse t-shirt, and we put a hammer in their hands, and we say, we're gonna build a house together. And most of them look at us like we're nuts. They're thinking, how are we, a bunch of 18-year-olds, going to build a house together? Paul mentioned this a bit ago. The college's commitment to this project is part of a greater commitment that the college has. If you pull up the college's vision and mission statement, in the first sentence, you see that the college wants to be a model of experiential learning. That's who we want to be for our students. And we work really hard to be that. We also, within our mission statement, like Paul said, we really want to create students with lives of service and leadership in the future, not just in their 4 years at Roanoke. And so it's already part of what the college believes in. And when you show up day one at Roanoke College and you've heard this lingo, you've heard about what college will be like at Roanoke College, and then they literally come in and hand you a hammer and say, we care about people in our community. We care about service. We care about you learning by doing things. It's just an incredible, in my opinion, an incredible way to really kind of exemplify what it is to be experiential educators and to be community building sort of teachers in a learning environment. And so I love that about Roanoke College. The RHouse project is sort of, we think about it in terms of 5 days, right? We start with our foundation Friday, Saturday, freshman move in, Sunday we start building. By the time we get to Thursday, we're moving a house. You know, it's so quick, you know, within 5 or 6 days, it's come and it's gone. And that process, those 3 days that we have our first year students in the RHouse project, there's so much that they're getting. You know, we unify them. You take 500 people that mostly haven't met each other, and we say to them, you, the class of 2024, you, the class of 2016, are gonna do this together. And there's something about having something that everyone can focus on and come together on that I think brings school spirit, and it brings people together in a sense of sort of collectiveness that has, I think, done great things for our students just to form relationships early on. The other thing is that it's pretty even playing field. You know, you take 30 Roanoke College faculty members and about 50 or 60 upper class students that are orientation leaders and 500 first year students. Most of all of them, whether they have a PhD or have been at Roanoke for 3 years or 3 days, most of them haven't built a house before. And so it really levels the playing field in terms of, you know, who's the teacher and who's the learner, and you can kind of come together and be part of something as a unit without all the hierarchies and things. I think that's a really neat piece of the puzzle. And then the last thing is it's hard to be uptight and nervous and worried when all you're focused on is making sure you don't hit your thumb with a hammer. You know, you really have to just sort of forget about all the other stuff for an hour and a half, and be part of this amazing experience. And so the RHouse project and its impact on students is really great in a real big picture way for 4 days. And then we move it. And this is the part that I think a lot of folks forget about, is that this house is nowhere close to being done, right? And so over the last 15 years, we've developed, I say we, they, my students that have gotten into this project and come up to me after they work for an hour and a half and say, I want to do more of this. And we say, great, come on. And next thing you know, we've got student leaders that are leading Habitat Build Days. Our students work every Saturday from the day the house moves on, Hawthorne parking lot until the house is dedicated and the family receives the keys to their home. Our students are there working every Saturday in small groups, 10, 12 at a time. But there's a different kind of impact that we have, that this project has on our students that is much deeper. When you have a student that goes and works on a Habitat site every Saturday or 2 Saturdays a month for 4 years, it's a different kind of understanding of what your community looks like. Because all of you that have been here on campus and that have lived in Salem as a student or otherwise, that you drive 20 minutes outside of campus and that it's a really diverse community. And I think a lot of our students don't explore that as much as we would like. And so our students that go and work in, Southwest and then Northwest Roanoke, they get an opportunity to explore the city in a way that many of our other students don't. So there's a real impact there, just in community understanding and learning, and the diverse experiences that they have there. The other thing is they develop deeper relationships, because the families that we're building for, they're still showing up on Saturdays a lot of times. And then there's new families that aren't receiving a house this year, but probably next year. They're out on the work site. And so our students interact with a great number of people from all over the world that are going to be Habitat home recipients. And they learn so much from them, hearing their stories. Many Habitat families are refugees, and they have incredible stories to share. And our students really learn a great deal from their experiences. And then of course there's the Habitat staff, and they teach our students some things we wish they wouldn't teach. No, kidding. They do. There's a great number of staff and Builders Club, who are the retired volunteers with Habitat, and they share and teach and help our students learn more about the Roanoke Valley and the passion and love for Habitat that all of them have. The last thing I'll say is that, some of you watching right now, I can't see who's on right now, but I guarantee you that there's folks that are watching this or that worked in my office at some point, that were out on build sites with Brian and others on these Saturdays. Students don't leave Roanoke and their Habitat life ends. That doesn't work like that. If a student graduates from Roanoke and they were hooked on Habitat as a senior, I guarantee you they're still hooked on Habitat. We've had graduates that have gone on to work for Habitat for Humanity affiliates in North Carolina and South Carolina and here in Roanoke. We've had students graduate and work as AmeriCorps volunteers for other Habitat affiliates. I got a call one time from a student who was in Nicaragua doing a Habitat for Humanity International build and said, hey, I just wanted to let you know I was headed to Nicaragua to work with Habitat. I thought you might want to know that. And he had graduated 6 or 7 years prior, and then of course, just think about the number of students that volunteer for Habitat affiliates all over the country, just because they had one opportunity to try it as a first-year student at Roanoke College. So the impact is ongoing. It's an hour and a half, kind of like Paul's $1,000 that became $750,000. An hour and a half investment can become a lifetime of service and a lifetime of just, community building. Paul always said, when I first started working with Paul in 2003, and we started doing these trips, he would say, you come to build a house and you end up building a community. And I really believe that that's what we are doing with our students, and what they really are creating for themselves is that they show up for an hour and a half to build a house. And after 4 years of opportunity, they've built a community that will stick with them for the rest of their lives. So it's a good thing. I'll let Brian take over from here.
All right. Well, thank you, Jesse and Paul. After everything that you guys have stated, I'm not sure that there's a whole lot left about this project. You guys about covered it. You know, it's interesting to hear how it was, how it is, and I think I'm in a unique position working in the community directly to kind of see how it might be in the future as we move ahead. When the students come out and work on the house, there's something that you don't always see when it's on campus, and that is that the house does get moved into the larger community. And so for us, this particular build over the years has been pretty instrumental in creating opportunities for additional conversations, different partners to come together, and different ways of interacting with the neighbors. So as we build it on campus, you build right now, we've kind of evolved. It's a 4-piece modular, and then we move it with trucks and cranes. But what you don't see on campus is that we also build this roof structure on the foundation. So the house goes up as a foundation, and then we put a roof on it. So it looks like an itty bitty little house that just doesn't fit in the neighborhood. Many of our neighbors love to stop by and tell us that house doesn't belong. So we get a chance to share what this whole project is and say, okay, on this day, we're gonna have an 80-ton crane out here and big old semi trucks, and we're gonna move this house. And they show up. They show up with chairs, they show up with sodas, they show up with everything. And they are so excited about this process because these are usually vacant lots that have been vacant for many years, and there's something happening that's positive on their block. This project is a continuing opportunity to engage with our community. It helps us too in the long run. If you think about 15 years, that's a legacy in a lot of ways. And it's given us some place as a platform of stability in our organization to say, hey, when we go talk to local government, to other organizations, we can walk in there and say, we do this every year. This is normal, even though it's quite exciting and quite different. It's big. And so it gives us a chance to maybe grow a little bit and pull in some different partners that might have said, oh, okay, they're building a house, but we can tell them how we're building this house, how we're building our house. And that gives us a lot more strength in the community to engage. One of the other things about this project that's really unique, I think, for us is that the families get a chance to work with the students, and that doesn't always happen. Our families are always out there, but if you can put this in the context of this year's family in particular, usually we don't let our families' children out on the site until they're 16, and that's not a child, I know, but we just have rules that we have to follow. But this year's family, their daughter turned 16 at the RHouse build. So her 16th birthday was building her house while 45 students sang happy birthday to her. That's pretty powerful. She's not going to forget that. And probably the students aren't either. As we move out and they get settled in here in the next few weeks, we're also able to say this house is complete. And for our city government, they can look at this as another way of creating income for taxes, as all houses are taxed. They can use that for additional programming, additional funding, different opportunities along the way. There's just so many ways that this particular project creates opportunities out and about. I think one of the most unique ones this year, and I hope that we can continue this in the future, is that last year we were out there and one of our O group leaders, one of our professors, had her daughter with her and just kind of sitting out there. And habitat's great. You can always, put a little piece of wood aside and a hammer and a couple nails and have a little 4-year-old banging on some nails and be part of the project. And that's part of the fun of this. Sign the house. That's always a great opportunity. In this particular case, it's turned into something else. Jesse mentioned service learning. Well, that particular professor happens to be teaching an inquiry class this year, Dr. Julia Sinkowitz, and she is actually, her whole class has just been extremely successful in helping us expand this one house project into the larger community. So they've gone out and helped us do some physical property assessments so that we can do a before and after picture of what our work and other housing partners in the community had in 2015 when we started, but also maybe as we're wrapping up so we can better determine what our impact will be in the larger sense as we move forward. So without that one little moment at an RHouse build, we may not have made that connection. So much like many years ago with $1,000, as Paul mentioned, this house every year creates those opportunities along the way. And our contractors and our volunteers build their schedule around it. Our crane operators always just extremely excited when they come out. Our local volunteers, our Builders Club actually call up when they're setting their vacation schedule because they want to participate. So they move their vacation times around just to be a part of it. And then I guess we can talk about some of the alums that come back from time to time on a regular basis, or the ones we've hired along the way who continue to participate. And that's always a wonderful thing. So I think the legacy aspects of where we are now just kind of makes me super excited about the future of what we might be able to do as we engage more classes in service learning. And so the build becomes just a mechanism. Obviously, that's a really big, important part of this process for our family, but as a means of engagement, it's kind of infinite. We can go anywhere we want with this, and I would look forward to doing that in the future. So that's probably about all I have, and I'll open it up for questions as well, but it's a pretty magical process, and it shouldn't work. We'll leave it at that, but it does.
Well, wonderful. These were just, I learned so much just listening to each of the three of you, and kudos to the hard work and the inspiration that you have done in continuing this project. I know that we have some pictures, and I was wondering if maybe I could reshare my screen and we could scroll through some of them. And if anyone wants to comment and just tell me when to move to the next, would you all like to do that so that folks can see some of the pictures?
Sure.
Okay, let me share my screen here. So I think we have completed our house is the very first one. So if anyone just wants to kind of commentary, Jesse, you want to start and then just tell me when to go through each picture?
Sure. Well, so this was almost a year ago. Ryan, do you want to talk at all about the neighborhood and the family? And that's a typical design that we do, a 4-square kind of model.
Yeah, and this particular block that we built on, just in the larger picture of the community, when we started on this block, there was one other owner-occupied house. Everything else was rental. We built this house, the RHouse 2019, but also one across the street as soon as this one was finished. And so we went from one owner-occupied structure on that block to actually 3. And that was in large part because of our RHouse build that was the main catalyst for giving us the opportunity to work on a second one after that. So with that in mind, it just created a whole different level of support in that block. And then one of the other neighbors started refinishing their front porch. And then 2 doors down from that, they were gutting that house. And you started to see this synergy and spread of positive redevelopment in some of these older structures or older homes that are there that also need some maintenance and love sometimes. And these 2 houses, this one in particular, are very visible, and they help drive some of that new positive energy. And this is the one that we'll hope to dedicate here in just a few weeks. This is an interesting one because it was very, very visible as we went through with it. We're on a corner lot, and if you look in the very background, you'll see just a little of the history in the sort of gargoyle stone gateway to the entrance. So we never built a house in isolation, and our neighbors here have been very welcoming and appreciative of having this lot developed, and are excited to see it come to a close so we can clean up all of our mess and make it really pretty.
Yeah, the Harain family, they were great to work with last year. When Brian was talking about the block that only had one owner-occupied house, when they moved in, it was his brother. So in the background, you can see the guy in the brown, I guess it's a navy or black jacket. It was his brother that then received the house across the street. And so it's just been kind of neat to see family and community coming together and able to live as both family members and neighbors at the same time. It's pretty neat because they're a large family, but they were a lot of fun to work with. And then Leonore and her 2 daughters were with us the entirety of the build this year on campus. And the 16-year-old was pretty shy, but by the 3rd day she had opened up a lot, and they were really great. Both just being on site and being willing to talk to our students and answer questions. I mean, imagine being a high school student and kind of being thrown into that. You know, they did a really wonderful job. It was great.
These folks might be familiar. Do they bear commenting? But we won't tell which walls that President Maxey built. But we could just point out they're slightly off plumb and slightly. No, I'm kidding. It's always great having our faculty, staff, and leadership at the college participate, because I think again, like you said, it breaks down the barriers between folks that may not be approachable behind their desk out here on the job site, we're kind of all equal. We're all learning, we're all growing, and it gives us the chance to just have a conversation informally. And sometimes the world needs a few more of those. So it's always great having that participation.
I'll add to that briefly. We had last year, I think for the first time, we added a faculty staff buildings block of time for just faculty and staff to come out, and have had lots of great participation. And so where the build is typically just for our first year students, we always have faculty and staff that say, well, when do we get to build? When do we get to come out? And so it's been nice to be able to add that to the piece.
And for this one in particular, if you ever want to see second floor trusses being assembled without a first floor underneath them, come on out to the parking lot. It's always fun.
Yeah. And then Paul, you want to talk about this, designing the house?
Well, it's been our, I guess every student habitat group does it, but we've been doing this since 1986. On the last day, we would sign the house, and the person's our names are still in there, invisible, but are still in there, and it just goes to, it illustrates to me that that this, we build community and a house happens, but it's built on the shoulders of all these people, whether they drove one nail or 1,000. It's everybody together that makes this happen.
And Paul, just for the record, we've taken that a step farther. So every bent nail, we draw an arrow and put Paul right next to it. So you're identified well in every house, okay?
You know, I appreciate that, Brian. You know, I really do. Now this is always interesting to me, and this is what Brian needs to take credit for. When we first started building habitat houses on campus, they were one floor, about 11 or 1,200 square feet, put them on a trailer and move them. And then we built them in two halves and then moved it and then put the roof on. Now we were building in an area where the houses had to be 2-story. And there were moments that I thought, well, that might be the end of our house if we have to build 2-story, but no. Brian comes up with these ideas that we can cut each floor in half. And so the bottom half, the 2 floors of this house are really 4 pieces. And then when it comes, when we transport them to the site, put it together like a Lego project. And in the morning, there was just a foundation, and by 1 o'clock, there's a house standing there. It's pretty amazing, and thanks to Brian for making all that happen. It's a miracle.
So I believe we have a time-lapse video that I thought we'd share. It's just about a minute long. So let me see if I can get this. Are you all seeing it?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, let me make it
All the
big.
people in orange shirts are helpers and supervisors, and the rest in gray shirts are students.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and press play.
That must have been me working there because I don't see very much movement.
They're waiting on the siding for you, Paul. It is a nice reminder of how we could be a little closer in pre-COVID times, and yet one way or another we can make it happen. It just takes a little more organizing. So
This is in the lower Olin parking lot, where we were there for 2 or 3 years until it got moved to the upper upper lot by the above Alumni Field.
Hawthorne.
Did you all get to see the whole thing?
I think it paused through the first part.
I'm so sorry. Should I replay it, or do you feel like everybody got a sense?
I think we ought to pause and ask if there's any questions.
Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing. Sorry about that. I don't know how my big sophistication is not always working. Okay, so I know that we do have some questions that have come through. So let me just get to those. I have to put on my glasses. This is Kim Nor Shepherd, class of 93.
Kim
Shout out.
Nord didn't work a lick.
She says, just want to say to Rev Hendrickson, it's been a very long time, so I'm sure he might not remember me. I think he does, Kim. But I went on a spring break trip and the Hurricane Andrew trip to Florida while I was at Roanoke from 89 to 93, and I have such wonderful memories. Now I am a statistics professor at Cecile Community College in Maryland and have started a habitat group at Cecile. Gosh, Kim, I just drove past Cecile last weekend at a lacrosse tournament. That's so funny. Kim says, thanks so much to Roanoke, to Habitat, and Rev Paul. It's so wonderful and inspiring to hear how the program has grown. Keep building. Take care.
Kim was a great person to have on the trip because she brought lots of energy, and that's the key. I mean, you got to get up at, dark 30 and have breakfast and then start hammering, and sometimes college students aren't entirely awake until about 11 a.m. and so you always had to have somebody like Kim on the trip who brought truckloads of energy. The trip she was talking about Hurricane Andrew, Ned Morris was in Jesse's position at that time, and after Hurricane Andrew, he took a group to South Florida to work on Hurricane Andrew relief with the Habitat group in South Florida.
So we have a comment from Haley Tortoisstall. Haley, I hope I said your name correctly. I am incredibly grateful for the opportunities for service through the chaplain's office and the Center for Civic Engagement. Thank you, Rev Paul and Jesse. So we have a question. What have been some of the most surprising moments during your builds?
Okay, we were at in New Orleans working on a Habitat house in an area of New Orleans that we probably wouldn't visit after dark. We didn't feel unsafe during the day, but it was kind of a rough area. But across the street from where we were building, this young kid, probably 6 or 7, came out of the house with a basketball, and he would bounce the basketball and then he would shoot it at a virtual basket. There wasn't a basket there, and he would bounce it and he would shoot it, and then he would pretend like he was making moves, and he would take it and he would shoot it, and all day long we would be working on one side of the street, and then in the street he would be bouncing the basketball and everything, and then one afternoon, right at lunch, I couldn't find any of our students, and they were behind the house we were building, and they said, Rev Paul, we have an idea. We're going to give up our lunch money if you go and buy that kid a basketball goal. And I said, well, I'll still feed you, but I think Roanoke College can afford a basketball goal. And so I took a little bit of time that day, went up to Walmart and brought a basketball goal down. And you would have thought that we gave the kid won the lottery or something, because he helped put this basketball goal together. And pretty soon, only 3 students were working on the house, and everybody else was out playing basketball in the middle of the street. But that's how community is built. The students just didn't see the house as the whole issue. They saw community and giving this kid a safe place to play. And I was just so proud of them that they came up and just said, hey, we're going to buy this kid a basketball goal and let's do it.
What a wonderful story. Thank you for sharing that. Brian, do you have any surprising moments that you'd like to share?
Just one in general, well, 2 actually, but one in general from last year actually stemmed from working with the family. And it was the fact that the youngest daughter, who's now a senior in high school, so she's high school at the time, but the beautiful thing is that she was a far better contractor and could hammer more nails than most of our big burly guys out there. And so she put us all to shame. And that was just phenomenal. I loved it because it sort of broke down all gender stereotypes and everything, which sometimes are pretty heavy out in the construction industry. And just said, hey, I can do this. And she did. And she continued to show us up with that great energy. So those moments are often out there as we work with people and find a way to be compatible in ways that maybe they didn't even know they had. And then I think, was it a couple years ago, Jesse, where, you can always make these assumptions, best laid plans, and things happen. And you can plan this thing out, and Paul gives, great credit for this organized process, but sometimes you still have to react, like when your tent is delivered and installed 2 feet too short, so you can't stand up your walls under it, so you can't build the house. And so we actually had to, in the middle of the RHouse build, lower the house while we were building it. And that was a very interesting lesson in bottle jacks and crawling around and, all kinds of fun stuff. So those kind of moments of being versatile and adaptable, I think that's what really comes out of this whole experience for the volunteers, but often also for us who are supposed to be leading it. Keeps it interesting and exciting.
Do we have a couple other alumni who have offered some comments that I wanted to share? Scott Segerstrom, he said, some of my very best moments at Roanoke are from habitat trips with Paul and living with Brian in Bartlett Hall. I am thankful Paul survived having to endure my presence on those trips. Katie Larrabee. Katie
Larrabee. Oh my
Larrabee. During my 4 years at NOKE, habitat became family. I am grateful for the lifelong relationships built during those opportunities. Thank you to Brian, Jesse, and Rev Paul.
Both of you.
Hey, Katie.
Eric Pernado. My habitat trip to South Carolina during spring break of 2002 was one of my favorite Roanoke College memories. It is amazing to see how the scope has grown and expanded. Proud to be an alum. And then Andrew Dittmar, Rev Paul's story about the basketball hoop, winter break, January 2012. I remember it well. I'm guessing he was one of the advocates for the basketball hoop.
Andrew was how can I say this? He was the entertainment, the day-long entertainment, I might add, on the habitat site. Andrew did work, but he was also heavy into live entertainment and maybe dancing on top of trailers, if I remember correctly. You're a good man, Andrew.
Every build site needs some entertainment. So Brian, a question for you that I feel like you probably could answer best. Rev Paul mentioned the University of South Carolina. Of course, we have this partnership with Habitat. Is this a trend that is common across the United States, that other higher ed institutions are collaborating with their local Habitat?
I think probably the collaboration is there, but to picture a build of this magnitude, I don't think it's very common at all. In fact, I think Andrew, you might speak out, Andrew, but there was some connection with Habitat International because this project in particular, the RHouse project, is relatively unique. I think there's some other places that have done it, but it's not common. I think it's very common for students to go to their local Habitat work sites and participate in much the traditional manner, but I don't think that this particular type of build is very common. And when we've tried to share it with other colleges or universities or businesses, it's kind of overwhelming. I mentioned before, it shouldn't work, and it does. And I think if if you haven't been part of it for how it's grown into something that actually seems organized and effective, it's hard to really imagine something this big working well. We're used to seeing this kind of thing on TV, the move that house and all that. And this happens on campus, and we sort of take it for granted because we've pulled it off 15 times. And that's a very deep pool of support and resources from volunteers and the community. So it's never just one person in this regard.
And for people who aren't familiar, are the houses all in one specific area of Roanoke, or are they spread out through many different neighborhoods?
They're spread out, although what's really beautiful about the work that we're doing right now is that we're concentrating on about a 5-year time frame in a targeted community. So we're trying to concentrate our efforts, which is also working with the city's efforts to create some positive synergistic effects with other partners and organizations. So not just housing, but lots of different ways to create positive impacts in communities that need them. And in this particular case, for the last 6 years, so this house plus since 2015, they've all been in roughly the same neighborhood. So, we tend to think of Habitat as one house, one family, but in this particular case, there's been 6 RHouses contributing to positive improvements in a neighborhood, and that's pretty phenomenal, particularly when we're looking at approximately 40 homes in that community in the same time frame. Well, a significant chunk of them are Roanoke College RHouse builds. So the students have made a tremendous impact. And even if they may not realize that or recognize it from what their work is on campus, that transfers into some major ways in the community. So we can kind of share that as it creates the strength. And we just tend to see a lot of different things happen in the community in a positive way. As we build a house, hedges get trimmed, alleys get cleared, trash gets picked up, work gets done on houses that need it. And here's 6 unique, amazing opportunities that have been driven just by the college students and the college's participation on Habitat here locally.
Sally, to back up just a little to your question of Brian about whether other colleges do this, the seed of this was before RHouse, and it was Service Day, and we added that because, as Jesse pointed out, the mission statement of the college includes service in a free society. And sometimes that conversation gets a little mixed up because we sometimes confuse service and volunteerism. To volunteer means what you do with your time that's left over. Service means what the community expects of you when you decide to be part of that community. I love the Marion Wright Edelman quote that says, service is the rent you pay for living. And I think early on in a student's experience at Roanoke College, we wanted them to know that working on RHouse was not an option. This was part of your orientation experience. And we hope that sticks with people in their lives beyond college, that whatever they are called to do, they are also called to serve. And it may be harder for other institutions to kind of make that switch from volunteer to service. But once you have the administration and the ethos of the college saying service is is primary, then the step to do an RHouse makes a lot more sense.
Well, Rev Paul, I can't think of a better way to wrap up the conversation. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I want to thank you and Jesse and Brian for sharing your time and your stories with us. This is an incredible story to tell, and I'm really appreciative that each of you all joined us today to give us an opportunity to tell the story. Thank you to everyone who joined us via YouTube today for the NOKELive event. We invite you to join us for our last 2 NOKELive events before the end of 2020. After Thanksgiving, we'll come back in early December and we will host a lunchtime look at the Inside Out Prison Project with Dr. Daisy Ball, who's one of our faculty members. It's an incredible program that she has built here at the college. That will be on Tuesday, December 1st at noon. And then that Thursday, we will be joined by Dr. Jeff Sandborg and look at the history of Roanoke College choirs here and a few really special treats that we'll have during that evening event on Thursday, December 4th. For more information on those, you can go to the roanoke.edu website /alumni and visit the Alumni Hub. There you can check out more information and links to all our NOKELive events. So again, thank you all so much. Best wishes to everyone this holiday season. Take care, everyone.